Uh,
Great. Thank you so much, first of all, for taking this time. So, first of all, we'll start with a little bit about the film. So, it's done quite well, and congratulations. Um,
Thank you so
how
much.
how did how did that happen? Can you tell us a bit more about the journey once the film was finished? What did you do with it?
So, the making of the film is obviously a journey in itself, and it's really, as you know, it's really hard to get short films made or financed. Aren't a lot of channels for that necessarily, especially in Bangladesh. So when we finished it, it was all sort of independently produced, and we were looking for a producer who could help us sort of take it to festivals, like a distributor, sort of figure all that out because that's something that I've honestly never done. And this is my first time sort of being a writer director and also producing myself. But what was interesting was there are a lot of producers in Bangladesh, but not a single one wanted to take this film on because they were like, it's horror, it's genre, it's different. And I think there's this perception a little bit, it's kind of an unspoken rule almost that films from South Asia need to be kind of sad or these very straightforward dramas that deal with things in a very specific kind of way. And this was so different that people looked at it and they didn't know what to do with it. So I just had to kind of take it on myself, send it to festivals. We were very lucky. We premiered at South by Southwest. And I think something about it really connected. Just I think the fact that maybe the horror intersecting with the South Asian culture just within weeks just so many people knew about it and wanted to screen it, and it helped me get an agent, it helped me get a manager, and really helped me sort of help my world open up in a really big way. So even just like obviously the making of the film is an adventure, but even just how it kind of got around has been amazing.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I tend to program Arab films or films from the Arab world, and it's very unusual to come across genre films, and they're often have a fairly cynical view of them. They expect a certain type of film, and you're right. People expect a certain type of film from South Asia and Southeast Asia as well. So well done for bucking that trend. And well, speaking of which, what got you into genre? Are you naturally keen on horror generally, or did you want to explore something else?
Well, there's this quote from Tarantino that I really like about there's an interview where Tarantino says that he likes when genre intersects with real life. And I always found that very amusing. I think I'm interested in a lot of different genres. I actually started a lot with comedies, and I've done a lot of horror comedies in between as well, with some music videos. And in Bangladesh, see, it's hard to sort of make fiction all the time. So my day job is basically has been advertising for the longest time. I direct commercials, and when you're a commercial director, I would say it helps in a lot of ways. Initially, when I came into commercial directing, I was like, no, I'm an artist, but honestly, it really helped me work with very diverse genres every other day. I don't know what project's coming next, and I think that really helped build my skill set. And yeah, I think I really like the way genre can intersect with South Asian culture. And I think we don't do that enough. And I think there is this perception. There's a feature film that I've been trying to get made called Moving Bangladesh. It's supposed to be my first feature, and it's a true story drama. And it's basically just a story about a startup from Bangladesh. And what I found interesting was we applied to a lot of really big international funds, and a lot of them give the feedback that this isn't the right project because it's inspirational, it's fun, it's a comedy drama, and they weren't looking for that. And I think this idea that the world looks for a specific kind of film when it comes from Asia or Middle East, wherever, they kind of put us into boxes that's been going on in my head. And I think genre can be an interesting way of breaking those barriers, because genre comes with its own expectations that you can break and you can mold in a different way. And I think it's a new language in itself. And there's fans of genre cinema all over the world. They don't care about what the subtitles are or who's talking or what people look like. They're just in for the ride. And I think there's something to tap into there.
No, I totally agree. Now, as you're speaking, I was thinking in terms of drama, you always look for the country of origin. It's going to be country specific, but I'm thinking of people that are very much into genre films. When they hear horror, they don't really care where the horror film comes from. It's kind of that's going to be the appeal, isn't it, when they go see it? That's a really good point. How did you get into filmmaking? How did you transition from advertising into fiction filmmaking in general?
Well, I think I started making shorts when I was really young. It was like I was 13. And I was just playing around with the digital camera with my friends. And I think the commercial filmmaking, the advertising really helped build that skill set. With Moshari specifically, honestly, the advertising background helped me save up and helped me raise financing for a short film like this. So I would say that the advertising background really helped with my career in that sense. But I have a family of artists. My father's a filmmaker. My mother, she's a poet. So I think like having that bit of background also helped. I think I had the privilege of watching a lot of really good films when I was really young. And I think that is like, I never got access to any of the equipment my dad had or any of that stuff. It's not like, you have cameras lying around if your father's a filmmaker necessarily, especially back in those days when it was all like sort of film cameras and it was all very different. But that's the access that I had. I had access to stories and I kind of fell in love with storytelling. But more importantly, I just thought I saw so many stories and I thought, why don't we have movies like that here? I kept seeing sci-fi and horror and adventure, and I'm being like, okay, I want to see movies like that, but with people like me in it.
আপু, ভ্যাম্পায়াররা মশারির ভিতরে ঢুকতে পারে না কেন?
How and why specifically that story, and how did it come together?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. Well, I think like the Moshari, the mosquito nets, I think are very specific to South Asia, maybe Southeast Asia, even some parts of Africa where we sleep under mosquito nets. And I just thought it's such a specific thing where you're sleeping under this Moshari, the light traps the net in such a way that you feel like maybe there might be something right outside the mosquito net. Like, what if there's a creature outside? What if there's something scary on the other side? And that idea is, it's something I've been toying with for a while because I think, in the Western idea of horror is there's a monster in your closet or under your bed. And I thought maybe a monster outside the Moshari could be our version of that, like creating kind of our own, this folk tale that doesn't exist, just based on my childhood fears. And when I translated it into a story, I just realized that weirdly it just resonated with people. There's something there. And I think also the idea of vampires and mosquitoes, they're so alike. I'm surprised no one's done that before, just like
Yeah,
equating together.
yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Now you pointed out. Well, I guess the net is a bit harks back to if you're thinking of more Western horror films. It's when the character runs and hides for cover under their sheets and then pulls the sheet over their heads, isn't it? So there's something a bit closer to the body and a bit all encompassing about the net as opposed to, say, a Google in a closet or something like that. So I can understand why. I mean, I thought it was really tense, a really tense moment and really scary. Um, and how did the casting process happen for the two sisters? Were they actresses that you knew from before that you'd seen work, or
Well, I'm
did
so
that
glad
happen?
you asked that because the younger sister, she's my niece.
All right.
She's never acted before. I think I love her work in the film. I think she's phenomenal. And I think what I don't like about horror movies often is people don't work enough on the dialogue or the characters. So for me, the journey of the two sisters was really important, making that relationship work. And what I love hearing is sometimes when people come up to me, they say, oh, I don't like horror, but I like that film, and I really appreciate that. So it was honestly saying, okay, I feel like I can make my niece pull off the performance, and I know her well enough to write dialogue for her that doesn't feel sort of fake or or like we're coming from her. And then it was sort of, how do I find someone who just has good chemistry with her? So that was the process, just having other people come and not really read with my niece, but they were just kind of like playing together or just like hanging out. And I was just seeing, okay, do they have chemistry? Does my niece, does Honora trust this artist? And that's how we found Sunera, who is actually a national award-winning film actress in Bangladesh. She's really, really good, does a lot of work here. So I was like, I thought it wouldn't be someone really known. I thought maybe it would just be, I was like actually not thinking in that direction at all. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll go to local theaters, but it ended up being one of the biggest performers here. But they just had such good chemistry from even the rehearsals that I just knew that. See, it was my first time doing horror, by the way, so I was like, if the horror in the film doesn't work, I was like, I can get rid of all the scares and it just works as a fantasy drama. So that was kind of what's going on in the back of my head, which I think worked out in the end, because even in a horror film, the drama needs to work, the characters needs to work. So yeah.
It's quite impressive, the landscape you managed to film in. How did you create any of that, or did you just find good spots in Bangladesh to film in?
So there was a little bit of CG in some of the shots, just enhancements, but we found this rickshaw graveyard, this like long landscape with a lot of broken down rickshaws. We heard about that and we just scouted that. It was honestly just looking at other movies that have world building, that have sort of dystopian, any kind of imagery, and going, okay, how many wide shots do you actually need before you go indoors? Like, what's the bare minimum number of establishing grand exterior before you go into this like little room? And we were like, okay, it's like 5 or 6. And then we like found those locations and worked around that. So because we had a very limited budget, we had to be very specific about where we shoot and how we shot. So it was like, I think just one day of exteriors and being very careful about the locations. And the interiors was this abandoned Coca-Cola factory that we somehow got permission for right before they broke it down. So that created quite the environment as well. So we didn't have to do a lot of art direction. There was a lot of it there. A lot of the sort of the textures were there. So we just kind of added to it because I don't think we could have created that from scratch. We didn't have the budget. So
Are you keen to keep working in Bangladesh, or would you like to work abroad, or would you like ideally a mix of the two?
I would say ideally a mix of the two. For instance, I just finished another project for Hulu. They have a series called Bite Size Halloween, and we did a short film for that called Foreigners Only. And yeah, we're looking into a festival run for that as well. And it was produced by 28th Studios, but we filmed it completely in Bangladesh, completely local cast. So yeah, it ended up being sort of produced in LA but filmed here. And I'd love to do more projects like that. I'd love to, because it helps the filmmaking community here in Bangladesh. We're learning so much from that, as well as, I think the world gets to see different images that don't exist yet. So I think that's fun.
Yeah, I think that's ideal, isn't it? It's foreign cash injections into local film industry to help them build their own profile in their own sector. And how is it at the moment? A lot of people would not know what the situation is with the Bangladeshi film industry. What's successful, what does well, what tends to be spent money on?
Right. That's a really interesting question. I would say that, historically, the Bangladeshi film industry has always been sort of a little overshadowed because there's India and the industry there is so huge, and they do what they do really, really well with Bollywood and now especially with South India. So having our little country right next door, I would say that there is a little bit of comparison. In fact, I would say there's often a misconception. A lot of people think Bangladesh is a part of India. So I think a lot of that goes into the conversation about film. But I think what's that kind of done counteractively is Bangladeshi cinema has become weirder, stranger, more independent and rebellious, almost as a result of all the other kind of industries around it. Last year, we had a film called Rihanna Mariam Noor, which was the first Bangladeshi film at the Cannes Film Festival in Uncertain Regards category. So that was incredible. So yeah, there are a lot of really great international films coming out of Bangladesh that are doing really well in festivals all over the world. And I would say that there are a lot of very commercial local films that obviously do very well in Bangladesh. So there's a little bit of a divide with a lot of sort of international films that do well in festivals and a lot of commercial films that do well locally. I think what's kind of new that some films are doing, there's a film called Hawa that did it really well recently, is finding a middle ground where people really embrace it at home and also it plays really well abroad. For me, I think genre could be a good way into that as well, because I think genre can play in festivals and also have a space there. So, but I think it's a really exciting time to not just be Bangladeshi filmmaker, but just to be a diverse international filmmaker. I think something about the pandemic, maybe that's in my head, that's my theory, that people just kind of got bored of watching the same things and the same kind of thrillers, all with like white people or whatever. And they were like, okay, what else is out there, whether it's Squid Game or Money Heist? And there is much more of an openness with audiences as well, like now, I think.
I will always like to know what you as a filmmaker like watching. So do you have any highlights from this year that you'd like to share with us, either from the festival circuit or that you've seen on TV or in cinemas?
Well, this is kind of like everyone's favorite film now, but for me, I was at South by Southwest when Moshari premiered, and I think the opening night film was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And watching that in this huge, like very ancient theater with this audience and having the Daniels come on stage and saying, oh, this film was made for you. This film was made for South by Southwest. You people are weird. You people are going to get this. And to see how that film, so right then it was like, I just finished watching it and I was telling everyone, oh my God, you guys got to see this movie. And then it just blew up everywhere and everyone was talking about it. That was amazing to see, because I was like, okay, that's my festival. That's where sort of we premiered as well. So every film from that festival kind of feels like, oh, hey, we're like, it's a brotherhood, a little bit of a gang. So seeing that film's journey has been really inspiring, because it's very different, it's diverse, and also it has a very strong emotional core, which is all things that I love and I want to continue in the stories that I tell.